Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Celebrating Community Resilience, Community Research Matters. I'm Dr. Roy Schwartzman. I am professor and head of the Communication Studies Department at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. Tonight, we are delighted to share with you the impact, the lessons, and the hopes surrounding 5 outstanding community campus partnerships, as well as curricular and co-curricular activities surrounding our work as the inaugural host of the National Communication Association Center for Communication, Community Collaboration, and Change. So what is this entity that we affectionately call the 4C Center? In 2019, the Communication Studies Department at UNCG was selected to receive a major grant that designated us as the first host of the National Communication Association, or NCA, Center for Communication, Community Collaboration, and Change. We'd like to thank the National Communication Association for this historic honor, as well as the ongoing support provided by the UNCG College of Arts and Sciences, the UNCG Office of Research and Engagement, and the UNCG Provost Office. With us tonight are UNCG Provost Debbie Storrs, NCA President Roseanne Manzyuk, and UNCG faculty and students. They join our featured guests, who are our community partners that you will meet shortly. But first, we'll have some words of welcome from UNCG's Provost, followed by the National Communication Association President. And let me introduce our Provost for you briefly. Dr. Debbie Storrs is UNCG's Provost and Executive Vice Chancellor and Professor in Sociology. She joined our university this past June after serving as Dean and as Interim Provost at the University of North Dakota. Dr. Storrs was raised in a bicultural family and is a proud first-generation college student who found a passion as an undergraduate for social justice and research. This is part of what makes her such a perfect match for what we're doing this evening with this entire program and what we do at this university. And so we are delighted to welcome Dr. Storrs, UNCG's Chief Academic Officer, with her remarks for us this evening. Provost Storrs.
Thank you, Professor Schwartzman, and good evening, everyone. I am honored to be here tonight to say a few words of welcome as we showcase campus community partnerships. I want to thank the UNCG Communication Studies Department for hosting this event, and I feel a real connection to what you're doing. You know, my discipline is sociology. I'm a qualitative sociologist with a real methodological preference for stories and narratives, and a theoretical framework that really has shaped what I do and how I think as a scholar, as a teacher, and as a researcher. And it's called liberation sociology, which is in real stark contrast to the dominance of mainstream sociology that you see in most universities. And so I just want to speak very briefly about what liberation sociology means for me. It's really encouraged sociologists to become actively engaged with communities, to research everyday human problems with the goal of social justice and eliminating social oppressions. And liberation sociologists basically ask research questions with the goal of empowering and benefiting marginalized communities. And of course, this notion of empowerment is informed by many critical theorists, but essentially they believe that research can enhance our understanding of power. And as a result of the understanding of power, open up new possibilities for communities to organize and to participate in our world more equitably. And in the liberation sociology paradigm, people are not seen as objects to study or recipients of political and educational projects, but really seen as actors, individuals and communities who can name their problems, identify solutions to transform their communities for more equitable outcomes. And the community projects that are highlighted tonight remind me of my own disciplinary perspective, the research I've done on healthcare issues in rural working America, and our shared values of empowerment and collaboration through dialogue, storytelling, and narratives. You know, the work that faculty are engaged in with this broader community that we live in is one of the many reasons that drew me to UNCG. We value our identity and our practice as a community engaged institution. Our relationship with this larger communities is for the mutually beneficial exchange of ideas, knowledge, and resources, and is firmly premised on collaboration and partnership, dialogue, and communication. And of course, the goals are really to strengthen democratic values, address critical social issues in our community, and to contribute to the social good. And tonight's events feature stories from our community partners, and is such an exciting opportunity for me and for you to learn more about these partnerships in Greensboro. I hope you enjoy tonight's showcase and tomorrow's conversation to connect people, create change, and work towards a more just world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Provost Storrs. We next turn to Dr. Roseanne Manzyuk, who is the president of the National Communication Association. I'd like to say a few words to introduce her. Dr. Roseanne Manzyuk is a university distinguished professor in the Department of Communication Studies at Texas State University. She earned her PhD in rhetorical studies from the University of Iowa, where both she and I studied amid the cornfields of dreams. A highly acclaimed rhetorical scholar, her many achievements include 2 Fulbright Scholar Awards, serving as editor of Women's Studies in Communication, and the 2020 Distinguished Service Award from the Southern States Communication Association. Dr. Manzyuk now serves as president of the National Communication Association, which is the oldest and largest professional academic organization in the field of communication studies. Please welcome Dr. Roseanne Manzyuk.
And my cat Yam. So I'm delighted to be here and honored as well to welcome all of you. Oh, there we go. Yam's not alone. And to just say a few words about the wonderful things that you've done and how this fits with NCA's vision and mission, and why the National Communication Association decided to found the center. So one of the things that is important within the mission of the National Communication Association is that it's dedicated to fostering and promoting free and ethical communication, the widespread appreciation of the importance of communication in public and private life, and the application of competent communication to improve the quality of human life and relationships, the use of knowledge about communication to solve human problems. And I can't think of any better way to think about how the kinds of collaborations that this center in its pilot program here at UNC Greensboro has done all of those things, has taken what we know about communication, has reached out to communities, and really has become a way that the NCA mission has come to life. I mean, one of the goals that is in our strategic plan for the association is to translate communication research for public engagement. And I'm so excited to know more about how you've done that and to be a visitor, even virtually, in your community this evening. So when we put the 4C Center together, what we sought was a way to facilitate partnerships, right, with community-based organizations and to really create sustainable change, particularly for vulnerable communities. And then to do that through the production and application of communication scholarship and practice. So when I have to say, I was not lucky enough to be on the selection committee that reviewed the initial proposal that your campus submitted. But I've looked at it recently and I can understand why you were selected. And in fact, I think there's a statement in the opening part of that proposal that conveys your vision, I think, very, very well and speaks to NCA's mission. Early in the document, you say resilience, right, which is your theme, calls attention to a dialectic of needs and opportunities. The concept of perseverance that underlies resilience recognizes the often overlooked need for building the community's capacity to adapt to difficulties. And the field of communication can play an especially prominent role in this capacity building. So I'm very honored to bring you greetings from the National Communication Association, and very excited to hear about what you've done to achieve and enact that vision. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Roseanne. I am Dr. Christopher Poulos. I'm a professor of communication studies here at UNC Greensboro. And tonight we're pleased to premiere a short 15-minute video that was produced by our friends at Tiger Moth Creative, who are a local Greensboro marketing agency, showcasing the community projects funded through this NCA 4C or C4 grant and so on. And I lost my place. I'm very sorry. And it showcases, what it does is it has the UNCG faculty that were the research faculty on the project here explaining and discussing how concrete programming can advance the dreams and confront the challenges that inspire meaningful community work. Immediately afterwards, you're going to meet our community partners, who are really the focus of this evening's event. So I hope you enjoy the video. It's about to queue up.
Our communication department at UNCG is special. It's different than other communication departments. We have courses that are designed to bring community together, but also to teach students the importance of community. Communities know the things that they need. They don't need to be told how to save themselves. They don't need to be told, oh, this is what you should do. They don't need more policing. They don't need more laws. They don't need more money thrown at them. What they need is connection with other community members.
What's particularly unique about the grant and about the projects involved in the grant is that the focus is how communication research can enhance community action. Some of the specific communication components involved in these projects involve the methods of going about community action. In particular, the democratic methods of communication, such as deep dialogues, such as storytelling, and the ability to connect empathetically with others for productive social causes. The stipulation of the overall grant was that we would find 5 community partners. And we tried to choose community organizations across a broad range of projects so that we wouldn't overly focus on just one particular community issue. But there is one thread that runs throughout all of the organizations and all of these diverse causes, and that is the theme of social justice. Really what we're after is a more long-term sustainability of these projects. Then the community organizations can act more independently so that their community projects can be more effective and maximize the involvement of all the stakeholders in the community. Of course, the big surprise is that soon after we got the grant, which was in the fall of 2019, the pandemic hit just a few months later. So really what the pandemic did is emphasize how central communication issues are to the entire process of community action and achieving social justice.
One of the things that has been noticed in studies of communities in recent decades has been this ongoing loss of trust. And this idea of having a dialogue with people who may be different from you, who may come from a different point of view than you, but having a dialogue or a conversation with somebody about things that matter was, I think, a really good thing to do to start to rebuild some of that trust. The 3 topics for the democracy tables were voting, tied to the November 2020 election, policing, really tied to what's going on in our broader country and still going on today. And the third was housing equity, which has been a real issue in Greensboro for a very long time. And what we were trying to do was get people to talk at a deeper level about community concerns, about human concerns, about things we could come together perhaps to change or to start the process of change. The questions we used to facilitate these conversations were designed to kind of elicit honest and deeper responses from people. Some of them were very strong in their points of view, drawn from experience, and this is one of the things that's part of the setup. We try to get them to tell their stories rather than come up with arguments. When a young black male starts talking from the point of view of fear for his life in a situation in which he did nothing wrong, he didn't even get pulled over for speeding, that just brings empathy into the room in a snap. It really does. Everybody's listening carefully and closely and respectfully, and nobody can argue with that experience. It's very real and it's very tangible, and it's been all over our news. Of course, we did all this in the midst of the George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, all that stuff emerging into our culture in the middle of a pandemic, and some of the topics we talked about were very intense in that way. There is a future for this kind of conversation in communities. I believe that we can carry this kind of spirit forward toward bridging our differences.
A learning circle is a free study group for people taking online courses together. You don't have an expert in the group, just a facilitator that keeps conversations flowing. They use a peer-based model, so people come together, they decide how to cover the materials, they help each other with questions, they share learning resources, learning strategies. To bring learning circles to Greensboro, we have a partnership with the Greensboro Public Library, but also Peer-to-Peer University, and it's a collaboration that really works. The university is bringing the research part, so we're really trying to understand the types of interactions that maximize outcomes in the learning circles. The library brings a knowledge of the people from Greensboro, their needs, what types of topics will resonate with them. And Peer-to-Peer University has 7 years of experience really helping libraries inside the United States and outside the United States really run this program. So it was a winning partnership, really. Over the years studying this project, we see that learners, they get a basic understanding of that topic that sometimes enables them then to enroll in a college class about the topic, and they at least have an idea of what is going on. You have people who are more able to be self-directed learners. They can set their own goals, find relevant information, adapt learning strategies. These are all characteristics also of resilient individuals. So you have in your community people who are more able to adapt in the face of challenge.
Cultivating community resilience is intricately connected to food because we have to eat every day. Food is something that is a vital part to our existence, and that's not going to change. So if we're going to build strong communities and we're going to build strong people in those communities, food is an incredibly important part of that. Over the last 10 years, the concept of food insecurity has become much more common, or at least we talk about it more. And food insecurity basically means that people don't have the financial access or the physical access to the food that they need. So they can't afford food and they can't easily find it. The Green for Greens project is really designed to build some local financial infrastructure so that we can, at a local level, support a SNAP doubling program. And so SNAP is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. It's what a lot of people think of as food stamps. So if someone has $500 in SNAP benefits that they get every month, they could come here to the market and turn that into $1,000 simply through the doubling program. And so where does that extra money come from? A lot of it comes from local donations from the community. So sometimes what we do is find an initial seed pot of money, then we'll bring that back to the market and use that as a matching campaign and ask folks from here at the corner market and the People's Market to donate and match that $5,000 so that we can raise it up to $10,000. When it comes to how we responded to COVID, we got fairly lucky in the beginning. And I think part of that was because we instituted some good communication practices up front. One of the things that we did was we started an advanced order and drive-through pickup model. And it's a way for people to stay in touch with vendors when they were really concerned about shopping in person. So they could place an order ahead of time and then they could pick up everything just through a drive-through. I would say that the Green for Greens program is definitely a success because at the very least, we've tested the community's ability to support itself and to support the people who are often most vulnerable in our communities.
This is one of the areas in Greensboro where food access, food justice is a very much a challenge. And so Goofy wanted to bring an urban farm so that people can come here and grow their food. We chose this location because the pastor, Lisa Caldwell, she wanted to transform the unused lawn space of the church to do the community farm. But before we settled on this land, we struggled to find a location because a lot of places in southeast Greensboro, the soil is contaminated from previous industrial times. So everybody should have right to healthy environment, healthy air, healthy soil, healthy water, healthy food. So that justice piece is very important. So this is completely run by volunteers. And so that has been a challenge, but also it's been very interesting. There are regular volunteers who just saw what we are doing and then they started coming. The idea is that people would come out here, the community members come out here and get to know each other. And that's really the key to creating relationships and creating trust. In fact, the other day when I was volunteering, the police officer with Greensboro Police Department, she works with this community and she stopped by to see what we are doing and she wanted to learn. I learned from her that this area is one of the highest crime areas in Greensboro. So she wants people to get to know each other so that when you know someone, you're not likely to harm them. You're not likely to steal from them. You are likely to watch out for each other. Was this a successful project? It is successful in the sense that we started this farm in February. And if you look around, it's amazing that we have this, we have done this much with, but again, the sustainability of this farm is yet to be seen. And we're working to make sure that this farm continues and make sure that we always work on involving neighbors and church members and others to come out here and just anyone who wants to be part of this farm.
One of the draws of this city is that it is diverse. It's got a lot of people, of course, who have grown up here, white, African American, and then in the last 20, 30 years, a lot of immigrants have also come to this city. But historically, being a city in the South, it's not surprising that there has been a lot of racial challenges and difficulties and tensions, and those didn't just surface suddenly. They've been around for a very long time. The Beloved Community Center is this great organization that brings together people in a grassroots way to make change in the community. They are the central player in addressing social justice. We'd had a long history actually of working together on the truth and reconciliation process here related to the Greensboro massacre. They have done so many amazing things, and yet because people with the Beloved Community Center are activists at heart, spending the time to document and archive and strategize about communication had not been at the top of their priority list. So the grant was useful in funding a full-time intern for a full year to work on those communication processes. The Beloved Community Center is now poising itself to roll out a statewide truth, healing, and justice process, recognizing that communities everywhere struggle with some issue in their community presently that relates to some historical event or pattern. And so, preparing for that rollout, we're trying to document now what are the processes that work in terms of communicating with people so that they come together to organize collectively. At the same time, and this is really important, the Beloved Community Center brings to the students and the faculty their expertise and their knowledge in communication, in community organizing, and in all of these things that we're doing already. So their education comes full circle. I am beyond proud and delighted that we have been a part with the community in making the world a little bit more just. That is valuable, important, and gratifying work. I think anybody who does the same, working with organizations that are struggling to meet the needs of their community, is going to feel the same gratification. And I think that is the highest calling that the communication studies discipline has. That was a great video. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. I hope that it showcased our community partners in the light that they deserve, because they are all amazing. In fact, we want to introduce our community partners to you now and let them tell you a little bit about themselves and the projects that they've been working on, maybe spend a minute each or so to do that. And then we're going to get into some more detailed or more in-depth conversation with them. So maybe let's start with Joyce Hobson-Johnson with the Beloved Community Center. Take it away, Joyce.
So greetings, everybody. It's wonderful to see those of you who are displayed on the screen and feel the energy of those who are not displayed. But it's just good to have this dialogue this evening. And as Dr. Jovanovich said, I am Joyce Hobson-Johnson. I am the co-executive director at the Beloved Community Center, along with my husband. And we are just one of those social institutions in Greensboro that's committed to making Greensboro what we think Greensboro was founded to be, whether the founders of it realize it or not. But we are pushing forward toward the dignity, the worth, the equality of each and every person in Greensboro, whether you were born here, you immigrated here, you came here to work, you came here for school. There's a place for you in Greensboro. And that is possible when your voice, your understanding, your hopes and desires, there's a space made for that, and we have a chance to dialogue one with another. So I hope we'll get to do some of that this evening, and I'm just been gratified to be a part of this project.
Thank you, Joyce. Always great to have you in our presence. Our next community partner is Glenn Perkins with the Greensboro History Museum.
Thank you, Spoma. I'm Glenn Perkins at the Greensboro History Museum. I have a whiny dog, Rosie, who may be interrupting me, but we are a partnership between nonprofit Greensboro History Museum, Inc. and the city of Greensboro. And our mission is really to tell that story of the voices that Joyce was just talking about, and really to represent all those parts of Greensboro history. You know, traditionally, certain aspects of the city, certain stories have been handed down, others have been repressed, others have been erased. And so with the Democracy Tables project that Christopher Poulos was discussing, it was an attempt to really sort of reach out and start the conversations that begin to build the historical narrative that will help to sort of reclaim that history for the majority of Greensboro. So I'm excited to talk about more about the project, what that we accomplished, and the benefits we had of working so closely with UNCG Communications.
Okay, can you hear me now? Okay. Hi, I'm sorry about that. Thank you, Glenn. Now let's go to Shante Skinner-Woody and Liz Seymour from People's Market.
Hello. How are you guys doing? I'm Shante Woody, and I am the market manager for the People's Market. I believe Liz is here too.
And I'm Liz Seymour, and I work with Shante at the People's Market. We are part of Neighborhood Markets, Inc. We're in partnership with the Corner Market, which is the market that was actually, you saw in the video, because they're a year-round market, we're seasonal. So when the video was made, we were closed for the season. But we work together on the and growing the two markets, which are very different from each other by design because they are neighborhood markets. So they reflect the neighborhoods they're in. But what we have in common is the Green for Greens Fund, where we double people's SNAP benefits and address not only food issues, but issues of support, building, not only addressing hunger, but building a resilient food community and system, and supporting through people's purchases at the market, supporting small scale entrepreneurs. So we get a lot of bang for not only our buck, but the USDA's buck.
Thank you, Liz and Shante. Can you hear me? I'm sorry, my mic is not working very well. Thank you, Liz and Shante, for that wonderful work. Now let's go to Nathan Lewis and Reverend Lisa Caldwell from Guilford Urban Farming Initiative in collaboration with St. Philip AME Zion Church, and the project is Garden of Peace.
Thank you, Edsco. Hi, I'm Nathan. I am the farm manager at the Garden of Peace. We're located in the Warnersville neighborhood, just about half a block up the street from the Warnersville Rec Center. As she said, at the St. Philip AME Zion Church. We are just starting our second year farming this urban space that was formerly a grassy lawn, and we're very excited to be kicking off another season of making healthy fruit and vegetables accessible in the Warnersville neighborhood. We're also providing training on urban gardening, nutrition, cooking, and we hope to add even more programs to that in the coming years. So we're very happy to be represented amongst this cohort.
Hi, everyone. I'm Reverend Caldwell. Just wanted to say hello. I'm not sure if you can hear me, but I just wanted to say hello. And the beautiful sunflowers behind me is a part of the Garden of Peace. Not only do we want to feed souls, but we want people to have a place to come where they can find peace as well. And we find beauty with the flowers that's in the garden. And we really appreciate Nathan and this community for allowing this to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend and Nathan. Last but not least is Beth Sheffield from Greensboro Public Library.
Hi, my name's Beth Sheffield. I'm the Adult Programming Coordinator at the Greensboro Public Library, and our project was Greensboro Learning Circles. The library believes in free and equal access to information, along with lifelong learning and spreading the joys of reading. And this project actually did all three with bringing together UNCG research and peer-to-peer universities resources We also worked with another community partner with Urban Ministries with a area called Partnership Village, apartment complex called Partnership Village. And it was a great project. We designed some open educational programs for the community, but they were chosen by the community. The community actually had their hand in choosing the programs, and we're gonna continue our partnerships from now on. So it was a great program. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth, and thank you to all of our community partners. I am Dr. Jenny Simon, and I would like to take just a few minutes here to discuss community-based research. It was the anchor and driver of the community campus partnerships we are discussing tonight. It is scholarship that is responsive to community needs and interests, inclusive of different types of knowledge, collaborative, focused on relationships and deep partnerships, targeting sustainable change in public matters, and most importantly, social justice, with special attention devoted to involving people who have been historically marginalized. Our faculty researchers occupied different roles. We were facilitators, consultants, content producers, scholar activists, interviewers, writers, but most importantly, we were partners. The researchers used a variety of methods for data collection: ethnography, surveys, storytelling, communities of practice, and participant observation. And the research teams drew on a variety of theories, including grounded theory, ecofeminism, culture-centered theories, communication activism, lifelong learning, coordinated management of meaning, critical race theory, and dialogic ethics. At this point, I'd like to introduce one of our faculty researchers, Marianne Lagreca, who will be asking our community partners to elaborate on their projects and community resilience. But we also want to hear from those of you watching us tonight. If, as you are listening to these projects, you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them in the chat, and we will answer as many of them as we can after we hear from our community partners.
Thank you, Jenny. All right, everyone. By now you have figured out that we are all communication people. And so we have had some different examples of communication so far. We've watched a video, we've had a little bit of testimony and introductions, and now we're going to get into some discussion and conversation with our community partners and really dig into some of that community-based research that Dr. Simon was just speaking about. So for the next 15 minutes or so, we're going to focus on one set of our community partners, the beloved community centers public narrative of community organizing, the Greensboro History Museum's democracy tables, and the Greensboro Public Library's learning circles. Then we'll turn our discussion with our community partners that are connected more to food. So we're going to focus on the neighborhood markets growing green for greens and the Guilford Farming Initiative with St. Philip AME Zion's Church's Garden of Peace. So we're going to divide this up in two different sections. And my first set of questions I am going to direct toward Joyce, Glenn, and Beth. And I'd like to open up with a question that asks, can you tell us the value of having university faculty and students providing research support to your programs, both to advance longstanding work in the community and to launch new programs and partnerships? Joyce, how about I kick it over to you first?
I'd be happy to respond to that. I have many stories, but I will not bore you with them. But the partnership that we've had with your faculty, as well as other faculty groups in the city, as you know, Greensboro is a university town. So much of what we do at the Beloved Community Center draws strength, expertise, new ideas, challenges from your students and your faculty. But the advantage that we have received from this partnership is access to individuals, both students, undergraduates and graduates, as well as faculty, and some of you who are strictly committed to research, evaluating in from more of a metrics type standpoint, what are the needs, and then what is the impact, or what are the impacts of the work that we do. And that's important because, you know, I can say it's terrible here. There's racial discrimination here. There's differentiation based on people's sexuality, male, female, whether you have an education or not. And that is important. Those are our stories, those are our truths. But when we come together as a community to make policy changes, to really shape that narrative in a way that's more aligned with the truth, it is so wonderful to have the facts and the figures as well. So we've had young people to come and scan the newspapers and come up with what the themes are of the needs and what the solutions are. We've had faculty to do statistical analysis. We've had your faculty in particular help us shape that message so that it is heard by certain sectors of our community better than others, because we have to not veer from the truth. We've got to rely on the truth, but different people's ears are tuned in different kinds of ways. So we've found it very helpful to run some of the things that we want to say, to share with the community by the faculty and staff first, and to see whether it resonates with different sectors of the community with which we're working. So I'll just stop there, but it has been tremendously valuable. And plus we feel that we add to you this storehouse of experience, so that young people, as well as the faculty, many of whom are young to me, have this storehouse of experience that you can use when you venture out into your long-term professional life. And we always encourage students to write your papers, your theses, your dissertations, even based on activities that you engage in with us here at the Beloved Community Center and with the larger Greensboro community.
Joyce, I'm really glad that you spoke to that evaluation piece right off the bat, because I remember when I first came to UNCG, I was in a community-based research workshop. And one of the things that was said was that one of the most useful things that we can do as community-based researchers is to help to collect those stories and to identify those needs and help to provide some of that tracking and monitoring data and evidence and information that I think you saw is so important there. Glenn, how about you? Do you want to speak a little bit to the value of having folks help with the research side of the Democracy Tables project?
Yeah, Marianne, I think for us, the research was really part of a whole practice of creating those dialogues around which we were able to shape the conversations. Having the faculty and the students, both their sources and perspectives, but just that knowledge of how to develop a process, a dialogue process by which we can depart from our experiences, like Christopher said, not from a point of argumentation, was really valuable to us for getting people to talk about issues that are important to them in Greensboro, about trying to create those kinds of spaces. And, we thought we were going to have those spaces in the library, in the rec center, out in the park, but using the tools at our disposal, which in this case was Zoom. Hey, here we are still, folks. And using them creatively and using them wisely to really create connections among different people. And I got to say too, the student involvement, both as from the point of view of researchers and from the point of view of participants, connecting us to those students was tremendously valuable for the Democracy Tables.
I'm glad to hear that, because we are very student-centered and student-focused. And so to know that that's a good element of the partnership, I think is really key. Beth, any other thoughts that you'd like to share on the value of having faculty and student researchers on learning circles?
I think that the research strengthened what we did within the circle. It strengthened the facilitators' guide, the feedback that we got from Chris and her team's research were extremely helpful with both peer-to-peer university and with us. And we also had help with students early on who designed a template for a flyer with another communication class, which was extraordinarily helpful. And I'm very appreciative of that too. And we had grand plans for student involvement, but because of COVID, where we were going to do some canvassing in neighborhoods and take that flyer and run with it. And we had to pivot a little bit, but I really appreciate all the research that was done and all the help from UNCG.
Thank you all. We really appreciated partnering with you all. Like it has been really rewarding and interesting to have weekly and quarterly meetings where we get into some of these ideas in much more depth. I want to transition over to the ways in which all of your projects highlight people's voices. So as evidenced around the world right now, elected leaders are having a lot of trouble talking to one another. And so I'm hoping you can all tell us a little bit about how your programs have brought people with very different views and ideas together. And what kind of positives have you seen for Greensboro as a result of bringing together those different voices? How about Glenn, we start off with you this time.
It was really, that was our whole idea, our whole concept was to do that and to find a way to get people in Greensboro, diverse people in Greensboro, different opinion people in Greensboro talking about issues that matter. So we did a lot of surveying at the start to find out what people wanted to talk about. We know we wanted to talk about voting. This project is part of what we were calling Project Democracy, which is a multi-year, still going on initiative at the museum. And I think, and it was, we had a really good response, I think, and it was fascinating to see the people who came together. Again, I'm going to reiterate that the student participation, I think, surprised people, the community members who showed up. It was a chance to engage with a group of people who really contribute to Greensboro and life in Greensboro, even if they're brand new here or just are going to be here for 4 years, they're still a really integral part of who we are as a city. And so when we were able to bring together, undergraduates in communication studies, and they're meeting with, city council members or architects in the community or retirees or teachers or all the other folks who showed up to talk about these issues, it was really great to hear. And I think it gave people a chance to listen. And I do have to say, as much as we all might get sick of Zoom in some ways, it has a little bit of that egalitarian quality. Chris would always talk about how it just forces people to take turns. So you can't necessarily talk over somebody. You can't necessarily, it's just harder to have an argument on this thing. I should say that. Okay. But let's pretend like it's harder to have an argument on this thing. And we didn't see arguments. We heard stories, and that was great. In one way, I think this is going forward, where it's as the culmination of Project Democracy. We're working on an exhibition now about the history of North Carolina democracy and talking about 11 elections. But the sort of hinge on which we're talking about those elections is choices and change. And that idea, that people's choices at any moment within the democratic life of people have these, foster and contribute to these changes was something that really grew out of democracy tables. So I hope that opens up a place that, the dialogue in this way can contribute to change.
Thanks, Glenn. And Beth, I'm going to come over to you next. Do you want to share a little bit about the ways in which learning circles can really help bring people from different perspectives together?
Absolutely. And we saw that early on with our 21-day racial equity and social justice learning circles. We ended up having 3 sessions because we filled up and had about 25 participants at the beginning of each sign up, max out the sessions at each time. And we saw that deep listening and those conversations come together where people respected one another in an environment where there's no facilitator in a learning. There's no expert in a learning circle. You're all there to learn together. So there's someone there to facilitate some of the logistics, but the group learns together, helps guide where the circle goes. And that also happened with stakeholdership and working with Partnership Village. And that was something that really, working with a marginalized population, it was eye-opening for me because I realized how much we have to work on removing barriers. It's not all, it's also, you know, you can have great content for programming or great resources for people to take advantage of. But if you don't work on also removing the barriers to get them in the room or to get them to the farmer's market or, you know, whatever the barrier may be, it's not going to be successful. So that was a big takeaway from this program. Was I learned to remove barriers and learned to pivot a lot, especially with COVID, especially with the lack of childcare for a program for adults, which was, you know, we had multifamily yoga for our reading and wellness learning circle. They wanted yoga. We had to do it in person because we had a blind person and they could not watch the videos. So we got an instructor. I didn't have any money in the grant for the instructor, but we found money from another source for it. So it was a great, you know, a great program.
And I do think both the public library and the history museum have really solid histories of creating those spaces where people from different backgrounds can come together. And if there's one thing I definitely know about the Beloved Community Center, it's that that kind of work is really part of your DNA. And so I'm going to ask Joyce if you could provide a couple of thoughts on how the Beloved Community Center really does create that space for people to come together from different perspectives.
Yes, you're right. And actually, we have partnered on several occasions with the public library as well as the museum, the Greensboro History Museum. In fact, one of our board members, Steve Summerford, is a retiree from the Greensboro Public Library. But at Beloved, we've come to realize that part of who we are is to serve as conveners. In another university community partnership we had with MIT some years ago, an expert said, well, you guys are conveners, and you know, everybody comes to the Beloved Community Center, and he wasn't exaggerating. One of the things I say to interns or new employees is that at Beloved Community Center, you must be prepared to interact with everyone. The president or future president of the United States might show up at our doors. Also, a person who is homeless, in need of food, shelter, whatever, might show up at the door. And you have to be prepared to interact with each and every one of them with equal respect and appreciation, knowing that you can dialogue and interact with them. So we've organized several things that have now become traditions, which, like the rest of you, were challenged under COVID. But there's something we call the Wednesday table. It used to be a table there, and it got too big to really have the circle that way. So we're just around the walls, but in a room downstairs, which on Sundays is the Sunday school room for the youth. We would convene the Wednesday table, and several of you on this call have been a part of that at different points in time. But any and everybody was welcome to come and to just share. One thing we learned was that the first thing that's important to do is to establish some level of relationship. You did that tonight. So we found just saying your name, Vincent Harding would say your entire name. So I had to say Joyce Ann Hobson Johnson. He said, because that meant something. Someone thought something of you when you were born and they named you. That's true. But as people got to dialogue with one another, that human essence, the basis for connections across these human constructs is possible. And of course, you have to listen respectfully. You can differ because we do differ, and that's okay. But learning how to differ and then talk through it. So we've learned how to do that. We've taught your students how to do that, and we're not perfect with it, but just flowing from a sense of respect and dignity for each and every person is so key to it. So during COVID, We landed on Zoom, just like everybody else did. So that gathering still goes on every Wednesday, as do other convenings. We do this for individuals around the country. Corporations, we have now begun to do this for, but the essence is the same. Building some sense of common relationship and respect. Demanding, well, I shouldn't say demanding, encouraging, coaxing, but bottom line, I guess it is demand, that people speak truth, your truth, and recognize that it may be different, at least initially, from that of other individuals. But if you keep listening and going back and forth, that there is a basis to come up with what we've called now community truth. Mm-hmm. And that has been so essential to solving some of the major social justice issues in this community, as it related to homelessness, as it has related to social police accountability, labor justice and sustainable wages. All those things have been solved, sometimes at length, but been solved through dialogue, one with another.
Well, in my quick qualitative assessment of the answers here, we've got emphasize dialogue, remove boundaries, convene and reconvene people, build relationships, and speak your truth. So, well, I've got one more question I'm going to try to squeeze in before we head over to the neighborhood markets and the Garden of Peace. And so I'd like to ask each of you, can you very quickly identify one or two of the most important resources that your programs provide to people in the community so that they can amplify their hopes and dreams? And Beth, I'm going to start with you first on this one. One or two of your best resources that you offer folks.
Well, I think that's the great thing is learning is unlimited, and learning is a value that once you have it, it's yours forever. So knowledge is power, and education is something that's important. And because Greensboro Learning Circles and Peer-to-Peer University is all open source, the classes that we create or the circles that we create from other sources, we keep them all open source. So, they're there to share as well. So I think, that's, the lifelong learning is something that anybody can do. And especially with the library, we have so many resources for people, and yeah.
Libraries are a starting point for sure. Glenn, how about you? What are some of the one or two of the most key resources that the History Museum can help with when it comes to helping people amplify their hopes and dreams?
I'm going to pick one. Is that all right?
Okay, that's great.
Okay, and I'm going to grab our middle name, which is history, which a lot of people, I think, feel disconnected from in some ways, not responsive. It's a thing of the past. It's boring. And there's a lot of reasons, which I think I tried to lay out a little bit earlier, of why people feel disconnected from that history. Their own story has been left out, right? Or it's been disregarded or even changed and misrepresented. So I think there's a point at which a museum can, which a lot of people expect, museums tell them stuff, but museums also listen. And I think that using this project as a way to listen was also an opportunity to help connect people to the relevance of the history. The things that are happening now are that history taking shape. So I think that by opening up that idea of change, of choice, tying those together, making people aware of them, is what I hope a resource for people going forward. Beloved Community Center, I think y'all know the power of this with your wonderful grassroots history focus. I think there's so much power in history if we learn ways to understand it and ways to use that knowledge to shape our future.
With that shout out, it would be my honor to give Joyce the final word in this section to hear what Beloved Community Center thinks are the most important resources that your projects and your efforts offer to the community.
Well, one that we've heard over and over is creating spaces for us to come together. Now, those are physical for sure, but beyond that, it is really spaces of the heart, spaces of the spirit of life and life more abundant. And that's a lot of what we do. Many people who come around have not had that experience where they realize that their voices matter and that their voices have power and can make a difference in their own lives and the lives of their neighbors, even their neighbors who have created difficulties for them. So creating those spaces, building bridges, because we do come from different spaces. So we ultimately have to figure out how to meet in such a way, again, based on this truth and justice, so that we really can create some greater transformation and healing, reconciliation, if you will. And third, I guess, is something that Glenn mentioned, is that though about a third of us at the Beloved Community Center have been here for a long time. Louis Brandon added it up the other day, and I think he added up 176 years of activism between him and my husband, Nelson Johnson, and myself. So we have that experience, some that was negative, some that was positive, but it's the resiliency of it, because that's what a lot of people are asking about. So the fact that we have been here for a while, learning as we go, but sharing also as we go. So that's what I would say: spaces, bridge building, that experience, and with that experience, a vision for where we can and must go for this entire country, for us to live up to our collective ideas.
Well, thank you all very much. It has very much been a privilege to work with all of you on your projects and to hear the various ways in which our faculty and students have been able to engage with you and your communities as well. I'm going to go ahead and transition over to our other two projects, the neighborhood markets and the Garden of Peace. And so we're going to hear from Liz and Shante and Reverend Caldwell and Nathan. And this topic is very near and dear to my heart because I've spent a very long time talking about food in Greensboro. And so my first question is, Greensboro has been among cities around the country facing hardships when it comes to food accessibility and affordability, but we're not alone. So what have you done in your various projects to create stronger connections between food and those who need it most? So Liz and Shante, I'm going to go ahead and start with you. Can you talk a little bit about how the neighborhood markets and Green for Greens has been working to connect people and food?
Shante, you want to take it?
Okay. Yes. So I've been a part of the People's Market for about 6 years now. I started off as a vendor, selling my desserts, and then I became the market manager in 2020 when COVID hit. And I had a personal, relationship with the market, and just going from, a vendor to the market manager. I was actually like a customer and vendor, and then now managing it. So now I can from my expertise as being a vendor and a customer, I'm able to reach the community the same way. And with Neighborhood Markets Inc. And the Green for Green Fund, being able to maximize our customers' dollars, their SNAP dollars, is very important to people in our community. They're getting more bang for their buck. They're getting access to fresh, affordable foods. That was the whole purpose of us starting the market, the People's Market, is just bringing food into the neighborhood. And so I think that we definitely reach people, especially our SNAP customers, by being able to maximize their dollars. And some of them become vendors, believe it or not. They come and they start off as customers, and then, you know, they get more involved in the market. And that was one of the reasons why I had to explain myself as far as how I became market manager, because I was once a vendor and customer of the People's Market, and now I'm managing the market. So it's just, we're always building community. We are always building community between the both markets, the corner market and the People's Market. And one of the unique things that I think that we are we kind of are all in market. We're not just your average farmer's market, where you, especially the People's Market, because we are seasonal and we only operate April through October. In our off season, we're always doing things to develop, help develop our vendors and how we can help the market grow. So doing things like workshops for our entrepreneurs, you know, sending them the right information that they need to help them get started or to grow their businesses is one of the things that we are so passionate about, is helping our vendors. So we are not just, we're called ourselves an entrepreneurship hub, where, you know, we're a platform for our vendors. You know, sometimes you go to the markets and you may just be another vendor, but our vendors are not just another vendor, they are like family to us. So I think that that's one of the way we kind of build community as well.
I definitely agree with you in the sense that sometimes it's hard to distinguish between who's a customer and who's a vendor and who's a community member, because at the neighborhood markets, at both of them, it's like there's a lot of blurring of those lines there in some pretty creative ways. We're going to come back to a little bit more about the markets and the Green for Green project in a little bit, but I do want to hear from either Nathan or Reverend Caldwell in terms of the ways in which you all feel like the Garden of Peace is helping to build those connections between food and those who need it.
Okay, I'll go first. You said one of us, but I'll go ahead and speak first. One of the things, COVID was very good for us, actually. I don't know how many people can say that, but it was. Our garden was just beginning to start taking shape. But during COVID, our parking lot was used for several things. We gave out food boxes. We fed children that were not in school lunch, and hot dinners. Other organizations came and used our parking lot. And then coming into the area, they saw the garden, they became engaged in what we were trying to do. And I think that was a good foundation for getting people involved and just reaching out and beginning to communicate with the community and to the neighborhood. So this was the beginning of everything, just building that trust in the community and letting people know that we're there for them. And during this time of pandemic, we needed people to know that we're here for each other. We got to do what we can to help each other. So that has been very good for us. I didn't know, Nathan, if you want to add anything. Okay.
Sure, thanks, Reverend. And building off of what you said, yes, another way we let people know that we're here for them is, you know, this garden is in a really visible place, right off of Randleman Road, just north of Florida Street. And people are driving by all the time. People are walking by on the Greenway all the time. I'm hardly there for I'm hardly there for a day, and somebody's always cruising through the parking lot, seeing what we're gonna do, seeing what we're up to, and you know, so we're getting visibility out there. But really, what the mission is that we're sharing with these people that come by is that to us, food is a human right. And, we believe that nobody should have to go without healthy food because of, their location or their socioeconomic status or their knowledge and ability to grow it for themselves. We front and center in everything we do is how are we going to make this food accessible to anybody who needs it, and that's why we welcome anybody into the garden, meet them wherever they're starting from, and walk them through it. And we've had so many people that come to us and say, I kill everything I grow. And I said, that's okay. Come over here, let me show you something.
I do want to dig in a little bit deeper on the question of how the research part of the partnerships have helped all of your projects address some of the challenges that you faced in doing this kind of work. And so I guess, Nathan, I'm going to come right back to you and ask, is there a way, can you give a very quick example maybe of how some of the research that you've been doing with Dr. Kinafuchi has been helpful when it comes to overcoming some of the challenges of getting an urban farm started?
Yeah, just briefly, one of the things that we had to first find out is what people wanted from an urban farm. What do you want us to grow? When can we open up the farm to make it most accessible to you? What are your barriers to accessing the farm? Is it knowledge? Is it transportation? Is it the knowledge base of growing food? I meant to say. Is it for some people we found out that a barrier was that it's on a church property, and they're like, oh well, that's the church's. If I'm not a member of the church, I don't want to go over there. Not knowing that it was also a community farm. So we've really discovered a lot of nuances to how people want to interact with the farm, or what keeps them from interacting with it.
Liz, I'm going to come over to you next and ask the same question about the Neighborhood Markets Project. In what way has the research with your partners, mostly me, helped you address some of the challenges when it comes to growing the Green for Greens program?
Well, and research helped us with more than Green for Greens, as it turned out, because we were operating at a time of COVID, and of course, markets are much affected by our concern for people's safety and people's concern for their own safety. So, and going back to both Joyce and Beth, a lot of the research was to help us understand where are the opportunities for the bridges and what are the barriers. How can we remove barriers and how can we build bridges? And right at the beginning, March, 2 years ago, March of 2020, it was clear something was going to change, and we didn't know how the markets could respond. At that time of year, it was only the corner market that was open. The People's Market normally opened in April. As it turned out, we didn't open until May that year. So we just had some listening sessions, and Marianne was part of it, and I was part of it, and some other people. We just sat there. I don't think anybody was even wearing masks at that point, but just talked to customers, talked to vendors, and said, it looks like things are going to change. First of all, do you want the market to remain open? If so, how do you want it to respond? How would you as a customer feel comfortable shopping? How would you as a vendor feel comfortable vending? What does the market mean to you financially? All those things, and got some great answers, some that we might have been able to write ourselves, and some of them that were really unexpected. And then held a brief outdoor meeting right after the market with the vendors. And out of that came the idea for the drive-through market. So reorganized the physical layout of the market in order to allow more space for people, and set up a drive-through. And that all came from listening. And we could have sat around a table and said, well, here's what we're going to do. And I don't think we would have come up with any of that. The other important listing was because the Green for Greens Fund, it depends on funding from donors. We needed to understand what people understood or didn't understand about the SNAP program, because people who have not needed to rely on it, as we discovered, really don't know that much about it. So we sat down pre-COVID, even I think before we were worried about COVID, with a couple of people from the community and said, we're not asking you for money. We're not asking you for anything except just how we have a story to tell. How do we tell it? And it turned out from talking to them, they themselves they thought what we were doing was great, but they didn't understand it. And so we got to understand what they didn't understand and help us to shape the way we approach the larger community. So we were speaking to some very different constituents, but doing that research helped us tremendously.
Like bridging those gaps, just like Joyce said, for sure.
Yep.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we've got time for one more quick question, and then we're going to move on to the next phase of our evening. But we do want to talk a little bit about the fact that we know that local food is good for the environment, the economy, and for building the bonds of community. So what impacts have your projects had in one of those areas, the environment, the economy, and or building community connections? And if you absolutely have to speak to two areas, you totally can. But Reverend Caldwell, I'll go ahead and come to you first this time. So what do you feel like are at least one of the major impacts that your project has had on the environment, the economy, or on building communities?
I'm really glad you gave me a chance to speak on two of them. I'm just going to mention that the environment, because the ground that's being used was just a grassy area. And it was great to find out that we didn't have the contaminants that some of the areas around us had. So we were able to make that area into a community garden. And that was one big thing. But I think communication has been another big one. Even though we sit right there in the middle of the Warnersville community, right in the middle of some low-income housing, and as Nathan mentioned, because we're a church, that has been a challenge. Some people do not want to come to the church, even to get their food, even though it's outside. So one of the things that has really been good for us is beginning, communicating with the community. We had some surveys done when we did our initial opening of the garden to kind of find out what the community people needed, what they're looking for, how we can best serve each other and work together. The other thing is that in communicating, we've had a little bit of everyone to come. And I think one of the good things is the younger generation, because we found a lot of the younger generation saying, hey, I love this garden idea, but I don't know how to cook anything out of it, And so we had programs like Taste and Tour, where they would tour the garden. And then we even had tasters from items that come out of the garden. Our children learn projects and learn things about the good bugs for the garden and things like that. And they build ladybug houses and that type of thing. So I think we've really learned a lot. This project have helped us to communicate with the surrounding area. And I am so glad to say that we've had people volunteer from everywhere, from all of the colleges in the area, in the community, and it's everybody helping each other. And I think that has been wonderful in building that trust and us getting to know each other and them getting to know that we're here to be a part of the community.
That's wonderful. Doing garden work, I think, can be incredibly rewarding in so many different ways that we touch communities that it gives me a lot of hope when it comes to the ways that food can build community. Liz, I'm going to come to you for a final closing thought on this question. And I'd really like you to speak a little bit about the economic impacts of the Green for Greens program, because I think you all have some really big things to be proud of, especially in terms of when we first started and you all first proposed this project, you'd hope to raise, you were all raising about $10,000 a year that you were doubling into $20,000. And you have far exceeded your goals on that. And so I'm hoping you could talk a little bit more about that, as well as any of the other community lessons that you've learned and impacts that you feel like the program's had.
Well, yes, the Green for Greens program has grown tremendously, both the need and fortunately the fund that fills that need. So when we did the books for 2021, and this is for two markets, one a year-round market and one a seasonal market, together we had doubled close to $40,000 in people's SNAP benefits, which is important because that means that's $80,000 that people had to spend on local food, locally produced healthy food. But the part that gets sort of forgotten sometimes is that's also $80,000 that was going to vendors who are themselves, some of them are also SNAP customers. They're vendors who are building a food business, and particularly for the People's Market, and particularly starting in summer of 2020, there was a real sense of supporting the Black community by buying from local Black vendors. And our vendors were very aware of that. Our customers were very aware of that. And I think a tremendous sense among our vendors that this is their opportunity to build something that they can rely on, that COVID had taught an awful lot of people that what you thought was safe and secure, it was not, and that you needed to build something of your own. And so to be able to inject another $80,000 into that system was huge for all of our vendors. And what that means long-term is that we're building a food system that does not rely on the things that just in this last week are beginning to look pretty shaky. Food that doesn't have to come from far away, that doesn't have to come from sources that you don't even quite know what they are. So economically, it just couldn't be more timely. And certainly every day, every week, Shante and I and Kathy, who's the market manager for the corner market, get to see the difference that that's making in people's lives. And Shante may be able to add a little bit to that because she's a customer turned vendor turned market manager. So she's seen it from every angle.
Very quickly, if she's able to get on, because we're going to need to wrap up this section and hopefully take a couple of questions from our audience too. Shante, did you have anything that you wanted to add very quickly?
No, I'm just excited about all things People's Market and neighborhood market food.
Well, thank you. Yes.
That is it, and that is all.
Well, I will tell you all, I am part Ukrainian, and we do not say cheers, we say na zdrovya, and it basically means to your health. And so I will, instead of cheers, I would say na zdrovya to you all and to the health of all of your projects. And I will hand things back over to Jenny Simon. I think we might have a little bit of time to take some questions from the chat. And again, thank you all for having this little dialogue and discussion with us.
Yes, thank you so much. It's so wonderful to hear your insight, and we learn so much from all of you. And that's one of the great things about partnering with you. What I'm going to do is kind of put all of the questions that I'm seeing into one and kind of summarize it. And you can all speak to it as you want to. This is really important for us as we move forward in working with our community partners. How would you like to see UNCG partnering with your organization in the future?
Can I say something real quick?
Of course.
So one of the challenges for the People's Market is that we have realized that a lot of our vendors and a lot of our customers come from outside of the neighborhood that we're in. And people in our neighborhood love the market, but they're not necessarily shopping at the market. We have some, in fact, Shantae and I are meeting with them by Zoom tomorrow, some communication studies students who are going to be doing a survey for us, canvassing the neighborhood to just say, to find out from people, are you aware of the People's Market? If you are, what do you like about it? What would you like to find? What do you wish was there that isn't there? And see if we can understand how we can reach out to our immediate community and strengthen that part of our customer base. So we not only want to work with the university that way, we are working with the university that way.
I would say for our project, we would like to do the same thing that Liz is doing with the community market as far as the UNCG and continued collaboration. Your feedback and your ability to, you know, kind of find those unanswered questions or find the questions we don't know to ask people about what they want is invaluable. And also having the energy of students to help like get boots on the ground and canvas would be phenomenal too. I wanted to answer one of the other questions quickly in the chat about during the pandemic, reaching out to the most vulnerable members. I just wanted to mention that we still have people in our community that do not have access to email or to, you know, to even to a phone that's more than just for texting. And, you know, it was a challenge. We actually put up a trifold board and let people put sticky dots by whatever they wanted to choose in library locations when we were open, but when we were closed, you know, and especially working with the Partnership Village community, it was a lot of phone calls. I mean, it was, are you coming to class tonight? And it was like, I knew I had to call this one gentleman the day of, or he would show up at poetry and basketball on Wednesday if I called on Wednesday, because he would go to the community center because Beth told me to come. And it's like, no, Mr. Boyd, it was like, you needed to come the next day. But it was like, you know, it was, you know, you get on the phone and you call, you know, it's, you just, you know, try and meet them wherever they are.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I would like to add the connecting with the community is also something I'm still looking forward to. I know we did one survey at our garden opening, but to really see what the community needs, and I think I'm hearing that from all of the partners, but when we really look at research and trying to really find out what's needed in the community and how we can better connect with the community is one thing that I'm definitely looking forward to.
Building off of that, I would say just continue to do what the communication department does best and communicate. Get the word out to the other departments at UNCG, to your friends and neighbors, to your networks in the Triad and beyond about the projects that we've heard from here today. If we cast a wide net, there's no telling what we'll catch, which is especially important for those of us who thrive off of volunteers. So big shout out to our volunteers who are with us in spirit, but not here today.
Well, thank you all. We really appreciate that. We appreciate your feedback. At this point, I would like to introduce two very special people. We have 2 STAR graduate students who have worked with all of our community partners over the past 2 years. Dan Baer and Jessica Clifford will share a little bit of what they learned as students in the program and serving as student program assistants. So Dan and Jessica, if you would like to take it over.
Thanks, Dr. Simon. I began working with the center in January of 2020 as a program assistant, helping to set up the grant process, working with the grant recipients, helping them navigate the sort of the bureaucracy of UNCG and the grant process. It was a really great experience. I learned a lot of things that I've been able to put to work as a graduate student. That I began in the fall of 2021. So it was a very valuable experience. One thing I didn't expect was that our resilience would be tested so quickly and thoroughly by events. We had to kind of roll with the punches. I know that like shortly after one of our very first events, the college went to online only, and that affected us. And I know that the lockdowns and things also affected how our community partners worked. But it also demonstrated really the importance of a lot of the projects, particularly things like Growing Green for Greens. It wasn't just that it provided affordable, healthy food for folks who'd been laid off or lost their jobs. The markets themselves provided a venue where neighbors and community members could come and interact with each other at a time when many other opportunities to interact had been closed. It was a really good boost for morale. The same with the urban farm. Neighbors could go and they could work on something at a time when a lot of us felt really helpless and really a real loss of control. It reminded me of when I was a kid, I used to hear from family members about their experiences during the Great Depression and World War II. And it made me realize that we were creating the stories today that will hopefully inspire future generations tomorrow when their communities face the challenges and crises of their time. As researchers, we ask, how does communication make a difference? And I think that the pandemic was really a real lesson in just how communication does make a difference. Jess, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Hard to follow up on that. So I followed after Dan's footsteps in, it was times weird right now based on the pandemic, but in fall of 2020 up until the end of spring 2021, that semester, I was working with the grant project. I am a second year graduate student here at UNCG, so I would say that working with the grant has been one of the better, if not the best experience that I've had as a graduate student. As a project coordinator, I helped in various ways, such as everything from administrative work to participant observation for research, specifically with the beloved community center. And in addition, what I noticed from doing this work is that there's a lot of more work than just the research itself, especially with these partnerships. So it pertains to writing stories and reports and announcements on social media and the website, attending meetings, filling out paperwork, producing other written material that really just makes the entire partnership possible. Most importantly, though, I've been able to have some great connections and relationships with some of the community partners here. So it's been wonderful getting to see what they do on a daily basis to make our community a better place here in Greensboro, and now the place that I essentially call home. And so it's also inspired me to continue to do research in the community, as that is part of my capstone that I will be presenting later at the end of the semester before I graduate in May. So as kind of noted by Dan, but there are a lot of injustices and wrongs that need to be rewritten. And I think that these university and community partnerships are one way, one avenue to build some of some sustainable social change for cities, not only like Greensboro, but others similar or different. So I think from here, we're passing it on to Dr. McCall and what they are working on. So thank you.
Absolutely. So thank you, Jessica and Dan, for all of your really hard work and all of your insights. My name is Jessica McCall, and my partner?
I'm Kim Cuney.
And we just wanted to talk a tiny bit about what some of the students have come to learn in and through the community-based research and activities. So I am actually going to share my screen with you so that you can see just a few of our campus community partners. So obviously this extends far beyond just our 5 campus community partners that were involved in the grant and the funding. But as you've heard, UNCG and Communication Studies has a long history of working with the community. So you can see these are just a few of actually the most recent campus community partners that we have had. And I want to go ahead and turn it over to Kim.
Thank you, Jessica. So our students in our classes and our students who are involved in co-curricular activities have been impacted by the time that they've spent in the community, but they've also seen and contributed to the impact of communication in our lives by observing and working with others to learn how people understand and accept each other, work through conflicts, and partner to address social tensions in their communities. And this is just a short list of some of the things that students told us when we surveyed them and asked them what impact have they had and experienced. I'm going to hand it over to Roy.
Thank everyone who is involved in this evening. And I want to point out something important. It's a question actually that our wonderful administrative specialist Marnia asked in the chat. And she asked about the possibility for this expanding. I want to point out that these types of efforts are larger than just what we're doing. What we're hoping, and if I could be so bold as to possibly speak for NCA, Roseanne, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I'd like to think that what we have here is the beginning of really a movement of the communication studies field and energizing these kinds of partnerships in all kinds of communities. And I can say that it is so gratifying and makes me and the rest of the department so proud to have such fine community partners, such dedicated students, and just overall, speaking personally, such committed colleagues in these sorts of efforts. And I'd like to say that the 4C Center is really the culmination of what our department has been about for many, many years. And we hope will continue to be about for many more years to come. So we thank all of the presenters. We thank all of you in the audience. We appreciate the time you've taken. Please visit our website. That is ccc4cs.uncg.edu. You can also stay in contact with developments on the project on our Communication Studies Facebook page, which, wow, but this is pretty instant. These things are getting put in the chat. We also have various web resources that are related to these specific projects that you've heard about. And so, yeah, there we go. There are our resources right on the screen there for you. And we also, again, really want to emphasize that these community partnerships have received a new infusion of energy made possible by the generous funding from the National Communication Association and from the support of UNCG. Many, many different components of UNCG administration came together to work with us to make this a reality. Thank you again to our provost, Dr. Debbie Storrs. Thank you to Dr. Roseanne Manzyuk, representing all the fine people at the National Communication Association that we've been so fortunate to work with on this project. Notably, Lakeisha Anderson, who from the very beginning, from that very first wonderful call saying that we received the grant and we are the 4C Center that will start all of this off. We look forward to following the extension and expansion of these efforts in the future. And now we'll turn it over to Spoma.
Hi, I'm going to bring it to a close for us in just a couple minutes, but I wanted to say a few more things. Yes, I'm Dr. Spoma Jovanovic, and I had the distinct pleasure and really honor of being the program director for the last 2.5 years with this center and seeing all of these different projects come to fruition. It's been a joy to work with the faculty and the community partners. I want to encourage you to go to this website that we have listed here, the cccc.uncg.edu. We have a 42-page report with some great photographs, by the way, that goes into a lot more detail about the research, lessons learned, and some of the research findings. In some cases, some of our projects continue, so some are more fully developed than others, but I think you're going to find it very, very interesting. We also have up there a research magazine that UNCG puts out. We are, the center activities are featured in the spring issue, and that online version is posted, and also has some insights from our community partners that I think you will enjoy. And but I want to really encourage you to come back tomorrow. Today was focused on research. Tomorrow we're going to turn our attention to conversations for communication conversations for collaboration and change. And starting at 11 o'clock, going all the way till 5 o'clock on the hour, 50-minute democracy table structured conversations. One of our projects, we're putting that model to work for us tomorrow, where everyone will participate in rounds with prompts, easy access into conversation with people who are super experienced about topics like activism and organizing, and people who have no experience in that. Topics on, food justice and learning circles, and all the things that we've explored here, the deeper questions that drive some of these projects. So I hope you'll join us for one conversation, or all 6, or 2 or 3 or 4. And you'll see our community partners there at the various conversations with faculty, with students, and community members. It's been a great evening. You can find the times, topics, conversation guides at that website. Thank you for joining us this evening, and we hope that we will see you tomorrow. Thanks to all of you. Good night.